Hello guys, welcome back to King What If, and I know this is kind of random. This will be my first What If in 9, maybe even a year, and I know I haven't posted in a while, and I'm not gonna sit here and say that I'll be posting soon if you like these videos, but I can say like this won't be the last video you hear from now. There'll at least be like one or two extra videos, depending if I post this or not. Now, I haven't really been doing it because I kind of fell out of it, or more so, like I wanted to download stuff on my phone and I couldn't, this screen recorder thing had to go. Anyway, let's start this what if. This is what if Azuku Midoriya was the reincarnation or just was Mikey from Tokyo Revengers. Now, his quirk will be revealed, but okay, never mind. Just pay attention and listen. Okay, how about this? 5 likes. If this video gets 5 likes by July 25th of 2022, I'll make part 2. Okay? Let's do that. 5 likes. Anyway, and comment too. Again, if you try to comment under a video and you can't comment, I don't know why YouTube does that. I allow comments. I really like hearing comments. And also, give me what if ideas, Even if I don't, record them, I still like to just think about them. Anyway, let's start. By the way, side note, I've done this what if in my head sometimes, and I realize what doesn't work is I need to keep Tokyo Revengers out of this. No Tokyo Revengers characters at all. But anyway, maybe some, but let's start. We start this, what if off when, basically, Midoriya is 4 years old. As Midoriya is, you know, as Midoriya is 4 years old. Midoriya being 4 years old would, basically just been walking around the neighborhood as he's just ready to get his quirk. Midoriya would smile as he'd just be ready to get his quirk and things. Anyway, as Midoriya be walking, he would stop by an ice cream truck, getting some ice cream as he'd be walking home. He would then see Bako bullying a kid. Midoriya would want to would want to intervene and help the kid, but he'd be stopped by a ruckus. As Midoriya would be stopped by a ruckus, he would then he would then hear something as he'd see people running away. Upon doing that, Midoriya would climb to the top of a tree as he'd see police and delinquents fighting it out on the streets. There would be gunshots, and the police would be fighting the delinquents. For some reason, the police wouldn't be exciting Midoriya, but it would be the delinquents. Midoriya would see the delinquents in their cool tattoos, the way they were fighting with their quirks, the way they looked was so cool, their uniforms. In the end, the delinquents would end up getting away, and Midoriya would shine, as there would actually be a wounded delinquent, uh, you know, running past Midoriya as he'd hide past the trash can. The cops would say, "Kid, did you see anyone run by? This is urgent." Midoriya, looking at the delinquent at the side as the cops can't see him, would say he ran that way. As they'd say, "Thanks, kid," as they'd start running. The delinquent would get up, saying, "Kid, I was very bold of you. Why did you protect me?" As Midoriya would then say, "Why did I protect you?" "Because I wanted to," he'd say, as he'd just smile. Midoriya said, "With that smile, kid, you look very childish." Midoriya said, "I know." He would then say, "Here you go, kid. Have a lollipop." As the lollipop would be shaped like Mickey Mouse. Midoriya would be like, "This is Mikey Mouse." As the delinquent would say, "Mikey, no, this is Mickey." As Midoriya would say, "Mickey?" The guy would say, "Nah, it doesn't matter. Let's go, Mikey." As that's where the prologue would basically start. Now, Midoriya would end up hanging around this one delinquent. As it turns out, this delinquent was the boss. And the name of this delinquent was called Sorichiro, I think that's his name, aka Mikey's real brother in the actual Tokyo Revengers show. As, it'd be called Sorichiro. Sorichiro not only was a good delinquent, but he was also a good mechanic, as he also ran a bike shop as a front to pay for his gang and stuff. Now, his gang won't be named, as again, that will be bringing too much Tokyo Revengers stuff in My Hero. And Mikey would Midoriya, who is now being called Mikey by this dude, would just sit there and watch him fix on these bikes. As he'd say, "Hey, by the way, like, what's your quirk?" He'd say. Mikey would say he doesn't know. No. As as then Sonichiro would say it's not good to lie. Mikey would say, "Alright, I don't know," he'd say. As Sonichiro would say, "What does that mean?" The doctor said I have a quirk, it's just they can't identify it since I didn't show any extraordinary abilities. They suggest it might be mutant, Mikey would say. I'd say, "Alright, well, what do your parents think?" So it'd be like, my dad, well, he abandoned me. And my mom, I don't know, I just don't like being around her. As teacher would say, "Why don't you like being around your mom?" As she'd say, she always cries, but she's just annoying. Plus, ever since our father abandoned us, she just works and works. I realize it's for us to pay for our house and fooding, but still, you know. He didn't say there are other ways to get money. He, as Mikey would say, "Are you trying to tempt me?" He, as Sergio would say, "No one can really tempt you. They can just tap into your deepest desires." Mikey would then say, "You know what? That is actually true." As they'd say, "How about this? You come on a job with me." As Mikey would agree. 1 week later, Cerrito and his gang would decide to rob all the convenience stores in the area at once, just because it would be so unexpected. They would go into the stores pulling out their guns as they say, "Hey, put all the money in the bag now." As then all of the owners would start putting the money in the bag. Upon doing that, the cops would come and they would completely have plans for the cops, setting up spike traps and barricades, completely ruining the cops. As they start running, there would then be a pro hero. This pro hero is just gonna be like a random pro hero whose quirk, sorry, gives him the ability to basically like manipulate a small portion of gravity around him, basically lifting up cars and stuff. As they would be fighting, as Mikey would, be wearing his bandana as he'd just be running around. Basically Midoriya would see this police officer. He would then see the police officer as he'd be throwing things at Sorichiro. Sorichiro would fall down as Mikey would say he couldn't just let that happen. Mikey would jump up and without, thinking about it, would jump up doing a front flip as he would axe kick this police officer on top of the head, basically this pro hero on top of the head, knocking him out. Soricho would be shocked as he'd say, "Whoa." He'd pick up Mikey as he'd get on his bike and start driving away, as they would then break apart. Soricho would then give Mikey his cut, which ended up being about $240, as they'd say, "Hey, you know how to fight. How do you know how to do that?" As Mikey would say, just TV, anime, video games, he'd say. As they'd say, "Are you sure about that?" Mikey would say, well, basically, he'd then say, the truth was this. There's this old homeless guy that he gives, There's this old homeless guy that he gives money to, and he teaches him how to fight. But, Soricho would say, well, okay. As Mikey would then say, by the way, how come you didn't use your quirk? Shinichiro would then look and put his hands behind his head. He'd say, well, you see, I'm quirkless. Shinichiro would say, what? But you're the leader of a pretty good delinquent gang. As Shinichiro would say, I know, but yep, that's my secret. I'm quirkless. He'd say, as Mikey would say, whoa, that makes you lamer and cooler at the same time. You know, we did a time skip a few years. As, you know, we didn't time skip to the actual day of the anime. As Midoriya is running through the street, he runs through the streets and things. Basically Midoriya is running through the street. He runs through the street as he's running to school. Upon running to school, Midoriya stops as he sees a villain attack. As everyone's talking about villain attacks, Midoriya will look at the villain, saying, what a waste of potential, just attacking in broad day, especially with his quirk. How super can he be? As Midoriya would start to run. He started running to school as Midoriya would say, I'm gonna be late. I should have brought my bike. As Midoriya would then run. In terms of being late, Midoriya would jump up to the actual window. As again, this is a superhuman society, he would then jump to the second story window as he would open the window, sliding in. As Midoriya would be in, as Midoriya would go to his seat, as he'd sit down. A few minutes later, the teacher would walk in as he'd say, hey class, as third years, you should be thinking about your futures. Teacher would then smirk, saying, what the heck? I know y'all want to be heroes, as he throws the papers up. Midoriya would just be sitting in his back on his chair, sort of the same way Bakugo is, with his cape, over his shoulders, or his whatever over his shoulders, his jacket over his shoulders, as they would just be saying that. Everyone starts showing off their quirks. Midoriya, everyone starts showing off their quirks. As Midoriya would be playing with the butterfly knife he had under his table. If you don't know what a butterfly knife is, it's those knives that you can spin and do tricks with. Anyway, Bakugo would then give his whole big speech about being the only one who can get into UA. They then say, speaking of schools, Midoriya. As everyone would look at Midoriya. The teacher would then say, you haven't turned in your actual registration yet. Midoriya would say, oh, well, I'm still thinking about it, so give me another chance, Midoriya would say. As Midoriya would say, he would, the teacher would say, another chance? I, but you need to turn this in. Midoriya would say, don't worry about it. I'm gonna turn it in. I've been busy. As Bakugo would say, been busy what? Fighting? Midoriya would be like, how'd you know, Bakugo? As as everyone would look at them, as they could tell maybe an argument was starting. Bakugo would say, because that's just what you are, delinquent piece of trash. Midoriya would stand up and he'd smile and say, you want to take this outside, Bakugo? As Bakugo would then stand up saying, you better get out my face, Deku. What are you gonna do? Use your imaginary quirk on me? Midoriya would say, oh, we'll find out. Teacher would then say, sit down, both of you. Midoriya would then sit down, not really caring anymore. As Midoriya would be sitting down, it'd be in the middle of the lecture, as Midoriya would be getting tired. All of a sudden, he'd get a call on his phone. Getting a call on his phone, he'd say, yeah, what is it? I'm in class. As then, they would then say something to him. Upon saying something to him, Midoriya would wake up. He would then rush over, as he then, basically jump out the window. They say, Midoriya, where are you going? the teacher would say as he'd start running. Upon running, Midori would start running extremely fast. They'd say it couldn't be true. Midori would then run as to the bike shop, as there'd be cops all around. Like I said, this isn't gonna be too much like Tokyo Revengers, so chill out, you guys. Basically, there would be police everywhere. Apparently, they did it. They finally did it. You see, Sorichiro's gang, which is called the Black Dragons, basically, over the few years had grown. It grew from 300 members from 300 members to basically 3,000 members, and they started to occupy this space right here in Shibuya or wherever Deku is. As you know, that would go on. Basically, the cops had raided this place and ended up taking, Sorichiro. He did suffer a hit to the head, but again, this is a superhuman society. Humans can endure more pain, so he would still be alive. Midoriya would say, "Big bro," as they're that close at this point. Sorichiro would say, "Stay back, Mikey." In the end, Mikey would start to get extremely mad as he'd clench his fist. All of a sudden, people would start saying that they felt lightheaded, as Sorichiro would say, "No, don't do it. Don't avenge." Like he'd say, "Don't avenge me. Just keep moving forward." Sorichiro would say, as Mikey would reside. He would then, nod his head as Midoriya would go home, whereas he does live in the same apartment just because of his though. No, he lives actually in a better apartment actually, something like Bako, because Mikey has like worked his way up in this gang, and basically, as Mikey would basically, they would then be like, he Churchill would then go to court. As he would go to court, Mikey would go to the courthouse, as he'd just be sitting there. As Sorichiro wishes, Mikey wouldn't testify in court, but Sorichiro would end up getting 10 years in jail because of all of his heinous criminal actions, and maybe after 6 years, he has a chance of probation. As Mikey was extremely mad, and Sorichiro was to be sent to Tartarus. Now, he might be quirkless, but he still had a great deal of influence, which is why even though he was sent to Tartarus, you know, he was sent to Tartarus, but he was sent on the first level, so like the most least dangerous criminals in Tartarus, basically. Now, you might be like, what do you mean influence? He only has 3,000 members. Those are the members that Sorichiro wanted. If Sorichiro was just accepting anyone who wanted to join, he'd have about maybe 12,000 members. That's right, 4 times the amount of members he had currently. But he only wanted true delinquents, not true heinous criminals that would go around and kill for no reason. You know? Sorichiro has killed people, but he's not gonna kill people for no reason. Anyway, as Mikey would be extremely mad, he would need to go somewhere, as Mikey would walk into the forest. Approximately the same place like Bako slipped in Midoriya's backstory. As he go to a dojo, As you go to the dojo, he'd start hitting one of those spinning things that you hit and they spin. That's like not like a duffel bag where you punch it and it keeps. It's like a standing wooden thing and you hit it and then the arm spins. As he'd keep doing that, he would then think about everything before he would kick it, completely destroying it. As the other man would walk in, he'd say, "So you're here. I haven't seen you in months." As Midori would say, "Hello, master." As if you want to know this master, his name is Lee. I just did that for fun, because again, like he had to be trained somehow. So Lee, is just an old dude in this like what if. This is just for fun. So don't hate on this what if. This is for fun. So he's like this old dude in this what if, and like he's a pro master. He used to be like a very high tier martial artist, but because of his addiction to drugs and alcohol, he fell down. So, now Mikey's his last student. Basically, he then says he's just extremely mad as something would be leaking off of Mikey. He'd say as Lee would then say, it's been a long time since I've seen that. Remember what I taught you about self-control. As they would sit down and meditate, Mikey would then say, "Hi, you always calm me down, master." As he would then pull out some money from his little pocket, giving it to him, saying, see when I see you. As he'd say, yeah, whatever. As, you know, Mikey would then walk to a special area. As he'd walk to a special area, there would then be a big announcement. Apparently, the 2 second apparently Soricho had recorded a message before he was actually arrested. Before Soricho was arrested, Soricho would have recorded a message. As they would all go to their meeting place to listen to it, as Soricho would say, the Black Dragons are disbanded. They say they were the strongest in, the area, and trying to overshow their strength got them where they were right now. In turn, this was the will of their captain, so no one could do anything about it. You know, if you think he's gonna, if you don't think Mikey's gonna get a gang of his own, he will, but he will get a gang of his own, but it won't be now. As Mikey would visit Sorichiro, under special things because he is doing Tartarus. Sorichiro would basically tell Mikey that to pursue his own dreams. Mikey would say, I want to be a great delinquent like you. He'd say, yes. You, you want to create a delinquent era. He'd then say, well, you're still too young for that. You might have a nickname already, but that doesn't mean anything in my world, he'd say. Mikey would then say, it doesn't. As Mikey, Soricho and Mikey would then laugh. Mikey would say, but I'm way stronger than you, and I have the charisma. I can do it. Soricho would say, I have no doubt you can, but why do it right now? Wait till you're ready. If you really want to create a new era for delinquents, you need more than brute strength. You need knowledge. How about you apply for like a hero school or something? Let them teach you how to control your quirk before you start leading a gang. Midoriya would say, I don't need my quirk. As Ceretro would say, even if you don't need it, you still need to know how to control it. And you know why. I don't think I need to explain that for you. Mikey would then agree, saying, you're right. In turn, Mikey would say he will apply for a hero school. He'll go there, he'll learn how to control his quirk, and then he'll come out. He'll end up leading one of the best gangs in the world and lead Japan into a new era. He would then say that's it. Then Mikey would say that if I just did what you told me to, I wouldn't be my own person. He'd say, so I'm going to, 15%. He'd say, oh, so I'm going to create a gang of my own still. It'll be a small time gang. As he'd say, Soricho would then say, this might be one of the last times you'll see me. So before you go away, I want you to tell me, at least tell me, what's gonna be the name of your gang? As, as Mikey would say, the name of my gang? I'm gonna call it Toman. As Soricho would say, Toman, huh? Alright then. As Mikey would say, stay strong. As Soricho would leave. Upon leaving, the 10 months would go by. And to basically wrap it up, over the next 10 months, Mikey would start to build a gang from scratch. he wouldn't tell anyone that the invincible Mikey was building a gang because he wanted people to join. He wanted to create a gang from scratch, basically. In turn, he would have his vice captain and captain. He'd have his vice cap. How the gang will work is it's gonna have him as the leader. He's then gonna have his vice leader, and he's then gonna have three divisions. But that's it. As we then cut to Mikey, as we then cut to Mikey with a dragon tattoo on his neck, with which we as we then cut to Mikey in front of UA. And this Mikey has a dragon tattoo on his neck. Plus, well, of course, his hair is green, but his hair is actually like a little bit longer than normal. Like it goes basically. If I had to compare it, I'd say his hair is like as long as Gyu's from Demon Slayer. Basically, his hair is a little longer. It's okay. Never mind. His hair is just the same. As Mikey says, it's time to start. As Mikey walks into UA, and this is where I'm gonna leave it off. This will be part 0. Now I'm going to record part 1 right after this, and then maybe if I get so that way if I get to my 100 or my if I get to my 5 like goal, you know, I could post the second part. Again, for obvious reasons, if you're an anime only and you're watching Tokyo and you're listening to this what if, I there are spoilers in this what if. Cuz let me say this in the most non-spoiler way I can say it about Mikey, that he gets complex. Okay, Mikey's a complex character. That's all I'm gonna say. So enjoy. I'm gonna go record part 1. You know,